teams that were doing this. They hired novelists, and it says in the book too that many of whom would never have made it on their own, and artists that have been starving because no one would buy their arts. They made them famous. And they promoted nihilism. Nihilism. Tie that in with what Bertrand Russell said, who was also part of all this group as well. He said, to control people, you must create a form of apathy. And that's what nihilistic art is designed to do. It says here they use certain agencies too. It was to provide independent support for the American foreign policy objectives, which sought to promote a united Europe. That was their policy, a united Europe. That was also part of the deal with the Lend-Lease program at the end of World War II. Eisenhower said that most of this money would have to go towards the working and setup of a united Europe. Here we are today. Folk lived through that whole period until not too long ago they admitted they now had a European Parliament. Yet for years they denied they were working towards that. It was just to do with trade, they said. An independent support for American foreign policy objectives was sought to promote a united Europe, though membership of NATO and the European movements, the latter being substantially endowed by the CIA. So they paid for all that. The US taxpayer paid for all that and didn't know. Which included a reunified Germany. That's happened now too. It was to act as an emissary for the achievements of American culture and to work to undermine the negative stereotypes prevalent in Europe, especially France, about America's perceived cultural barrenness. It was to respond to negative criticism of other aspects of American democracy, including its civil rights records. On page 119, it goes into the degeneracy of it. It says the art and sculpture exhibition, this is an exhibition they put on in Europe, it says, was curated by James Johnson Sweeney, art critic and former director of New York's Museum of Modern Art, which was contracted to organize the show. Works by Matisse, Derain, Cézanne, Seurat, Chagall, Kandinsky, and others, masters of early 20th century modernism, were culled from American collections and shipped to Europe on 18th of April aboard the appropriately named SS Liberty. Sweeney's press release made no bones about the propaganda value of the show. As the works were created in many lands under free conditions, they would speak for themselves of the desirability for contemporary artists of living and working in an atmosphere of freedom. On display will be masterpieces that could not have been created, nor whose exhibition would be allowed by such totalitarian regimes as Nazi Germany or present-day Soviet Russia and her satellites, as has been evidenced by those governments labeling as degenerate or bourgeois of many of the paintings and sculptures included. It's not long ago I read an article about the corpses that now have hanging, as they become more and more dehumanized, hanging in museums and art galleries. Back in a moment after this break. Hi folks, I'm Alan Watt and we're cutting the Matrix, going through a book called The Cultural Cold War, which is a good book for the time. I'm sure that's all we'll be allowed to know because this woman has done her research, and I'm sure too that she probably was told just how far she could go in bringing out this kind of information. Remember, we were always dished out information about 40 or 30 years after the events. That's pretty well standard. But as I say, keep in mind that an organization which was running the cultural industry for the whole of Europe and America would not give it up at the end of the Cold War or where the Berlin Wall went down. There was too much involved because they still had the masses to deal with. And they would not allow the masses to go off in different directions when they already had them on the same path. And that's what had happened by then. As I say, they're putting on these massive shows, these art shows across the world, all funded by the taxpayers. Art that you probably would never have bought yourself. art that many of the painters, as I say, if they tried to sell it, would have died in death and they'd been destitute because no one wanted it. And the big foundations were involved because they were promoting this art as being the in thing. All the big magazines at that period were promoting this nihilistic art, and they were saying that Mrs. Rockefeller was buying it. Lots of it. It's the in thing. And that's how people are. They want to copy. If this is the in, I want it too. It was all nihilism, basically. But they did the same with the music and various other techniques as well. And churned out novels after novels by third-rate writers, made them popular. Going on to 132, page 132, it says, the fundraising arm of the Free Europe Committee was a crusade for freedom for which a young actor named Ronald Reagan was a leading spokesman and publicist. The crusade for freedom was used to launder money to support a crusade for freedom, to support a program run by Bill Casey, the future CIA director, called the International Refugee Committee in New York, which allegedly coordinated the exfiltration of Nazis from Germany into the States, where they were expected to assist the government in its struggle against communism. There's a lot of this stuff just coming out in Britain now about Britain bringing in lots of these ex-Nazis too. It was kept very quiet there. Dulles, this is the Dulles family. Dulles kept a firm grip on the committee by placing CIA officers in key positions. If a problem arose which needed to be resolved out of channels, Dulles would simply call a meeting with the committee's principals in a New York club or hotel. Top-secret documents record a series of such meetings convened by Dulles at the Knickerbocker Club and the Drake Hotel, in this case in a bedroom booked for the occasion. How many Cold War campaigns were waged from hotel bedrooms? Other meetings were held in Alan Dulles or Frank Wisner's offices at CIA headquarters. The USA was a big operation, very big, said the narrator of Humboldt's Gift. Commenting on the dedication of America's elite as they manned this privateer, Henry Kissinger wrote, It is to the lasting credit of that generation of Americans that they assumed these responsibilities with energy, imagination, and skill by helping Europe rebuild, encouraging European unity, shaping the institutions of economic cooperation, and extending the protection of our alliances. They saved the possibility of freedom. This is the same man now that's still trotting around the globe, pushing the same thing for this new order of things. He's all over the TVs in different countries talking about it. He's the man behind, one of the men behind this incoming president. This burst of creativity is one of the glorious moments of American history. Henry Breck, a CIA case officer and alumnus of Groton School, expressed it another way. Of course, if you're in a real war, you must fight hard, and the upper classes fight the hardest. They have the most to lose. When they were not huddled together in clubs or hotel rooms, Breck's upper classes applied themselves with equal commitment to the business of entertaining. Lively, self-confident, voluble, Wisner and his colleagues were driven to enjoy a good party, just as they were driven to save the world from communism. Wisner loved to dance. He loved to do a dance called the Crab Communism, or Crab Walk. Angleton, a legendary consumer of martinis, and sometimes, if anything, he'd get a hold of, used to dance free-form to Elvis Presley tunes at parties, weaving enthusiastically and often by himself. And then he goes on to tell you that all of these guys, because they came from elite families, were also making a killing off this Cold War privately, because all their companies and corporations were involved in the Cold War. It was a great party time. It was a great big joke for them, in fact, to be honest with you. That's on page 133. And how did they organize? What did they use to organize? They used the very institutions that were already set up for world organization. On page 134 it says, the use of philanthropic foundations was the most convenient way to pass large sums of money to agency projects without alerting the recipients to their source. By the mid-1950s, the CIA's intrusion into the foundations field was massive. Although figures are not available for this period, the General Counsel of 1952 Congress Committee